So good afternoon. I'm Erin Wick. I'm the Senior Director of ESD Teens Behavioral Health Center. We run the only dually licensed behavioral health center for an ESD. So we provide both mental health and substance abuse treatment services. We provide that in a multi-tiered system of support through recovery supports. So today, I'm super excited about our partner and our trainer, Dr. Lauren Ashbaugh. She's been just a great partner for several years as we've really been, I would say, thought partners within the different regions that we serve. And so what came to mind when we talked about returning to care and how do we integrate our students and families back into educational services, we really thought that what we needed to do is maybe go back and do some more training and thinking through ACEs and trauma-informed approaches in an effort for us to really put together plans for those kids who really need these additional supports so that we can be really thoughtful about the way we engage and the way we respond. So with that, Dr. Lauren is a clinical and school psychologist who consults with lots of schools on implementation of integrated mental health and multi-tiered systems of support, which is my passion as well. She is now in our region, which is really exciting. This has been kind of a long-term relationship to get her down into our region. So I'm super excited for today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lauren. I'm going to be managing the chat room. So if you have questions that come up along the way, I'm going to be managing those and I'll feed those to Lauren as we get going. We're going to have a couple of breakout sessions with some guided questions. And then we'll give you guys all a little break along the way. So we're scheduled to go from 1 to 4. If there are other concerns or questions, please just send that to me in a chat. And if you can remember to mute your mics, that's absolutely great. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lauren, and thanks for joining everyone.
Hi, can everyone hear me? We're good? All right. So my understanding is that there are up to over 300 people here from a variety of disciplines, so that there are some superintendents, there are teachers, there's a wide array of counselors of different disciplines that are joining us today, which is wonderful. So that's fantastic. Because of that, I can't necessarily make the presentation specific to disciplines. So this is going to be mostly a content and ideas dump. And my hope is that you can take some things out of it that are useful to you, that you can ask some questions in the chat that we can respond to as we go forward. The presentation is really sectioned into 2 big sections. So the first part is really talking about mental health, trauma, what's going on in our world right now, and some of the resilience practices that we know make a difference in addressing trauma. And the second part is really about how do we apply some of that to returning to care. There will be a break in the middle. I can't tell you exactly what time it is because I tend to be a little verbose and I might go a little over or under, but there will roughly halfway be a spot where there is some time to reflect, to think about what your plans are going back to school and any questions that you might have for me. Oops. Okay, so this is a graphic I always show whenever I teach. I teach it in person usually, and I much prefer teaching in person like all of you do. I would get to see all of your beautiful faces. But the real question is, as we sit down to engage in this content, where do you think you are? Which side of this picture do you find yourself today right now? I used to run groups at a school for kids who essentially qualified for EBD, which mostly meant just profound amounts of trauma. There's a kid I adored. He was fond of me too, so he came to all my groups even though he didn't really buy any of it, and he really didn't buy this whole mindfulness stuff. So I did my best to teach mindfulness, and one day he came into my office, and this was on I found this and I put it on my door, and he said, "What's that?" And I was like, "Well, this is what we've been talking about. Like, this is mindfulness." And he just looked at me and said, "Well, why didn't you say so?" So some people are visual learners. I really like this graphic. His follow-up question was, so are we supposed to be the dog? And I think I found lately that I have really coveted how happy my dog is in quarantine. You know, this idea that being really present in that moment and enjoying somebody's company is really kind of what we're going for. So how do we get ourselves from the left side of the graphic to the right when we're in front of our students? How do we help our students get from the left to the right as we go forward? So when we think about zones of regulation and some of the things that we're doing in our social emotional learning curricula in order to help our kids learn to name their emotions, zones of regulation is wonderful that way. One of the things that often gets left out is actually what we call a feelings thermometer. So really figuring out how intense is that emotion that we're having right now. So we're usually very good at identifying the 0 and the 1 when we're in the lazy river in Hawaii and we can hear the ocean and nobody's talking to us and we're really, really chill. And we're really good at knowing when we're at a 9 or a 10 and we're in full-blown freak out mode. What's harder for us often, and really for our kids, is that 3 to 7 range. And that 3 to 7 range, figuring out where we are on that range and getting more comfortable with recognizing the signs that we're there are really useful because that's our working zone for practicing coping. If you are going to teach a kid deep breathing when they're in a full-blown panic attack, it's not going to go real well. That actually those breathing exercises are best implemented and learned and taught from that 3 to 7 range. So for us, it's noticing when our hands are getting tighter on the steering wheel, when our stomach's starting to growl or get upset or we skip lunch, what's going on with us that might suggest that there's some things we can do to try to re-regulate our physiology. So we're gonna do a Zoom poll really quickly. I'm just curious, we just got the guidance from OSPI on Monday about the return to school, and I'm wondering, how are you feeling about the return to school in September? So if you haven't done a Zoom poll before, it's really straightforward and it's anonymous. So I'm just curious how you guys are feeling about this return given what we know so far.
We're starting to slow down here on the voting. We'll give it a few more seconds.
Okay. So kind of a range, but it looks like a lot of people are feeling a little understandable tension and stress, but it seems like it might be in the more manageable range right now. And this is our feelings thermometer. For whatever reason, though. Okay, so we're going to go through a couple of coping exercises and strategies that we can use as we think about going back to school. So the first one I actually want to do, this is a GIF that I found online that is just a basic breathing exercise. And I want you to think about what this might be like to throw up on your screen as your kids come back into your classroom. So what I like about this one is that it's visual and that it also sort of shows the expanding of your lungs and breath and your diaphragm. The goal is to breathe all the way down, to push your diaphragm down and to fill your whole lungs with oxygen, with air. So this takes maybe a minute to do. What I'd like you to do is as this one comes down, go along with it, breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And in through your nose and out through your mouth. So I've introduced exercises like this to lots of people, and what's been interesting is I found that come February or March, a lot of teachers are saying they're using this a lot. They're putting it up on their slides before they teach every class, and honestly, it's as much for them as it is for their kids. So I'll have teachers say, I use this before all of my exams, but actually it helps me when I'm teaching. This is a picture of a gentleman. So this is gratitude, which there's tons of research support behind, that a daily gratitude practice actually does wonders for our emotional and physical well-being. This is a gentleman whose wife had COVID-19 and was very sick and was very well treated by medical professionals, and she was discharged and came back to the emergency room and held this sign up at the window and tell every nurse that had worked with her and treated her had seen his sign thanking them for their work and support in saving her life. And the nurse that took the picture and posted it just said everybody was just weeping. So this idea of gratitude, how do we give thanks to those in our lives and outside of our lives that are doing good things for us and for the world? Another one is humor. So I think humor is really important when we think about how we're coping with everything happening right now. I get a kick out of tweets, so tweets for parents. You know, homeschooling day one, trying to get this kid transferred out of my class. Please say a prayer for my 8-year-old son. He had to write 4 sentences. So I have an 8-year-old son, and I assure you that that it's a real challenge to get him to write 4 sentences. So thinking about how do we use humor in coping with things that are incredibly challenging or stressful for us. Finally, kindness and generosity. So this is Jason Reynolds. For those of you who don't know him, he is a really wonderful juvenile fiction author. So the book on the left, Long Way Down, is great for teenagers. The books on the right are called his track series. So Ghost, Patina, Sunny, and Lou. He writes with the voice of an adolescent and the experiences of adolescence, and he has a very diverse and representative cast of characters. And he's done really remarkable work. And when he first heard of COVID-19 affecting lots of different people and communities, he just put it out on Twitter, hey, anyone need groceries? And lots of people did, and there was a flood of responses. And some people asked him, well, are you worried that some people are taking advantage of you? And he said, I'm a lot less worried about that than those who don't have groceries. So looking for and holding these places where people are behaving with tremendous grace and kindness and generosity. And now when we think about it, I know that the question before, the feelings thermometer, the goal is to use some of these strategies to get ourselves maybe from like a 7 to a 5. It's very unlikely that we're going to engage in some deep breathing and go from a 7 to a 1. The goal is for us to be able to slowly start to bring our overall level of distress down using coping strategies and to be able to use this with our kids. This is a very simple, basic graph of the idea of sphere of control, sphere of influence, and what's outside of your control and influence. I bring this up now because a lot of what I'm going to talk about in the first stretch of this presentation really involves things that are largely outside of your control. The analogy I'm going to use for this is environmentalism. So if we think about climate change, for example, and we think about polar bears and the ice caps, that would fall in that outer ring, what's outside of our control. Now, knowing about the polar bears and the ice caps and climate change and the big picture pieces is really important in affecting our decisions and what we do in the sphere of control in our own lives. However, if we stay focused on the polar bears and we read globally all of this news and consume all of this information about the big picture, it can make us feel helpless and hopeless and sad and angry, and actually diminish our agency and our sense of power and control. So it's very important to know about this stuff, but then refocusing on what is it that I have control over? Do I recycle? Can I walk to school? What kind of car do I drive? Do I vote? Those types of pieces. And the sphere of influence could be writing your senator. It could be taking your friend's can out of the trash can and throwing it away or recycling it. So they see that and they recognize that and you're influencing their behavior. But really attending to this, because a lot of the first part is going to be out here. It's the things you need to know. And the second part's really going to focus on those things you have control over. It's really important to recognize where your focus is. 24 hours of CNN is 24 hours of that outer ring, okay? And you're likely not going to feel great at the end of it. And we're going to talk a little bit about media and dosing media, that if we spend a lot of time with our focus way out here, it gets very difficult to figure out where we should act and how to take action. So self-care and your rights, you have the right, obviously you're in your own homes, to take all the space you need, and please do. Some of the content that I talk about is distressing. I'm talking about trauma. You have the right to choose how you prefer to participate. So there are polls. There's no mandate that you take the polls or participate in the chat. It's totally up to you. I recommend that you use humor and laughter, but be careful with cynicism. It's a slightly different beast. It tends to be destructive over time. You have the right to speak and be heard. And what I mean by that, if you're in person, I would say that to you in person, you're invited to talk to me about any and all of this. So I may say something that doesn't quite resonate the right way, or you have another thought about it. Please feel free to email me directly or to reach out or to say, I don't know what you meant by that, or I didn't like that. You're not going to get a defensive response from me. I'm continually learning from the people I'm presenting with and for. The function of this presentation is, what are we going to be doing to build resilience as we go back into the building, in ourselves and also in our students and families? Well, first thing we need to know is what actually is resilience. I think when we think about resilience, I think that we have these models, we have these tremendously influential people in our world that we look to as exemplars of resilience. So we have Harvey Milk, Sonia Sotomayor, Malala, Maya Angelou, Sylvia Rivera, Nelson Mandela. If you don't know who these folks are, totally worth looking them up. These are people who have been through tremendously difficult circumstances and seem to have transformed those experiences into wisdom and action. And this is really what we're looking to build in ourselves and in our kids. We've also seen resilience in our kids. So I come from Tacoma, I live in Tacoma, I work very closely with Tacoma Public Schools, and Tacoma kids are incredible. They are talented, they are feisty, they are resilient, they are fierce and funny. They're all of these things, and this is why we do the work. We do the work because we are champions for the underdogs. We love celebrating the success and strength and grit and growth of our kids. I also know, well, this was working and now suddenly it's not. I also know that there's tremendous resilience on the other side of this screen. So in doing this work, in doing these trainings for as long as I have, what I've learned is that the people that go into human services very often have experiences that they have been remarkably resilient to. That the rates of ACEs and trauma in the people that work in human services are higher on average than the rates of those who maybe are on the Google campus. I don't know, I'm just saying. What I do know is that a lot of people go into this work because they want to be the adult that they needed when they were a child, the adult that they needed when they were an adolescent. I love working with adolescents. I had a supervisor one time tell me, you know, usually people who work with adolescents had a pretty interesting adolescence themselves. So really, really returning back to that space and being that warm, caring adult for kids, that's a lot of the reason why we do this. That also means that some of the content that I will talk about may resonate with you, and it may be hard to hear. There are a lot of different definitions for resilience. I like this one. I actually got it out of a sleep study of all things, but this one says it's the ability to face and cope with challenges, to adapt to the changes created by these challenges, and to recover and even grow from these setbacks. So that's that post-traumatic growth. But this is the part where we need to talk about what is it that we're needing to be resilient to. So toxic stress, ACEs, and trauma. First, I want to talk about language. As a psychologist, I find this pretty important. We are all going to experience adversity, challenges, and setbacks. Most of us know what that means. We're going to spend some time talking about ACEs. It's been really interesting. I've taught this now for 8 years now, I think. And it's been really interesting to see the huge increase in people's knowledge and experience and understanding of ACEs. So it's definitely something that I think is becoming more and more foundational in the educational programming for teachers and educators in general. Acute trauma. So an acute trauma in the world of psychological language is something like a house fire, a car accident, a medical emergency, something that happens, it's acute, and it happens once. A chronic trauma is something more like Hurricane Katrina, something that happens and lasts over a long period of time, a natural disaster. Something like COVID is actually probably characterized in a lot of our literature more as a chronic trauma. Complex trauma is considered long-term, frequent, repeated exposure to interpersonal trauma or violence. So these are the things like abuse, neglect, assault, things like that, where it's long-term and interpersonal in nature, and it affects our understanding of trust and safety in the world. And then toxic stress, which we're going to talk about right now. So stress is actually really important for us as an organism. It's the body's way of constantly monitoring daily challenges and adapting to them. It's actually a critical component of growth. And there are three primary types of growth, stress that are described in the literature. There's good stress, which are growth experiences. So down by 1 point on the free throw line, 10 seconds left, you've got 2 shots. That's a good experience. That's a stressful experience. How are you going to translate that experience into your life going forward? Studying for the SAT, studying really hard for a test that matters for you. That's a good stress. That's a growth stress. Then there's tolerable stress, which is bad things happen, but the person can cope with support. That's a huge category. So that could be some pretty extreme stressors, but they have adequate support. And then there is chronic toxic stress, which is intense, prolonged, frequent adversity This is a critical piece, without adequate adult support. This research really this data was really found in the 1960s by neuroendocrinologist Bruce McEwen, who did a lot of research on what he called allostatic load, which essentially is how much stress can an organism take on before the body starts to break down, essentially, that the cortisol, the HPA axis in our cortisol system is so overloaded that we start to get sick. This is also very old research, but essentially it's more for those who really like the graphs and the visual. The point of this graph is to show you that we need stress for peak performance. If I am not nervous, if I don't care about a test I'm taking, I am not going to perform well on that test. So that you actually do need a certain amount of stress in order to perform. We don't want our kids to come in just, like not caring at all, or we're not going to have a performance from them. I think it's actually sort of interesting they use the word lame here. But unfortunately, what we're seeing a lot of times is our kids are coming in way over on this sick, burnt out, anxious, panic, stress, breakdown side of our Yerkes-Dodson curve here. And this is often true for staff too. So by the time I'm teaching staff in February, I think a lot of folks feel like they're pretty far over there. The goal of our work around trauma-informed practices is not to move the green all the way back to no stress. We do not want to have no stress. Our goal, though, is to move us from these places of chronic toxic stress or sickness into a level of stress that is tolerable and promotes growth. So this brings me to our ACEs study. And I will just tell you straight up front that this story is a little bit triggering for lots of folks, and it involves abuse. So how did the ACEs study arise? The original question arose in a 1985 obesity clinic. This is Dr. Vincent Folletti, who's a deeply thoughtful physician. He was a primary care physician in this obesity clinic, and he was running a trial. He was running a study where he was helping his patients, who were majority women, lose really large amounts of weight. And his study was initially going great, and his intervention was doing great. He was helping people lose hundreds of pounds at a time. But what he started to notice was right when it seemed like his patients were doing their best and they had really crested that curve and the weight was coming off quickly, they tended to drop out of, a huge percentage of them dropped out of the study or gained all the way back. And he could not understand why. It didn't make any sense to him. It didn't align with any of the demographic data he had been collecting so far. So he went back to his team and he said, we're missing something. I don't know what we're missing, but we're missing something. So he added questions. He added biopsychosocial questions to his questionnaire. And so they involve things like, how much did you weigh when you were in first grade? How much did you weigh when you were in sixth grade? How much did you weigh when you were graduating high school? At what age did you start your period? At what age were you first sexually active? But he was nervous. He was a male physician asking some of these questions, these delicate questions, to women. And so he misspoke. And with one of his newer patients, he asked her, instead of how old were you the first time you had sex, how much did you weigh the first time you had sex? And she said 40 pounds. Because it was a case of incest, and he was thunderstruck by it. It was the first case of incest that he had come across in his research and in any of the work that he'd been doing, except that it wasn't. He hadn't been asking. So to his credit, he went back to his team. He said, I think there's something here. And they went back and started asking questions about abuse, neglect, family history, and he started to put together the fact that chronic early adversity definitely impacted health and health outcomes over the lifespan. He went to present this data, and all the people that were at this big conference, he got actually sort of chased out of the room and told he was wrong. However, there was a physician there that said, you know what, you need to meet Dr. Onda, the CDC, because he thinks that there's something to this too, and he started to present on this. So he did.
Lauren, we're getting a couple requests because people are having a hard time digesting all of the information for just to slow just a little bit.
Slow my speech down?
Yeah.
I will try.
I know, we're a lot alike like that.
So what are adverse childhood experiences? What was it that he started to ask about? So he started, these are 10 categories. The original ACEs study actually only had 7. It didn't include neglect. And one of the household dysfunctions. But as the follow-up study involved physical, emotional, sexual abuse, physical, emotional neglect, mental illness, incarcerated relative, mother treated violently, so that's domestic violence, substance abuse, and divorce. And these were what they were asking of their patients. Dr. Folletti partnered with Dr. Anda, and they had this incredible resource of Kaiser Permanente health data. So they had 17,400 participants, which never happens in the average medically based study. And together they put this data together and they analyzed it. And what they found were that almost 2/3 of their patient population had at least one ACE. 40% had 2 or more, and nearly 1 in 5 of the study participants had more than 3 ACEs. When Dr. Anda got the data and he finally saw the results, he wept at the amount of suffering that humans experience in this country. What they also found was that ACEs have a dose-dependent relationship to over 40 health outcomes, meaning that if you have 0 ACEs, your risk of obesity is here, 1 it's here, 2 it's here, 3 it's here, 4 it's here. And you can use that same pattern for heart disease, cancer, stroke, COPD, smoking, alcoholism, drug use, suicidality. And for us as educators really thinking about these other pieces like life potential, whoops, that's not supposed to be there, life potential, graduation rates, academic achievement, lost time from work. Without intervention, there is a 20-year life expectancy difference between those who have 4+ ACEs and those who have 0. So this study has been repeated. So they looked at it again in 2018, not with Kaiser data, but actually with a nationally representative sample, and they found roughly the same results. It was a more diverse sample. So the original Kaiser study was actually really highly educated and really white, like disproportionately white. And what they found in the 2018 study was intersectionality, meaning that there's an interconnected nature of social categorization like race, class, and gender that's regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or advantage. So what that meant in the data was that those who identified as bisexual were more likely to have more ACEs than those who identified as gay, lesbian, and those who identified as straight. Women had more ACEs than men. Black Americans had more ACEs than Hispanic Americans than did white Americans. So that there are actually these overlapping and interconnected systems of discrimination or disadvantage, which is relevant to what we're going to talk about later too. And essentially, there's differential exposure to things like rejection, exclusion, oppression, threat, and neglect. And this really deeply affects our feelings of belonging, which is a basic human need, and value. Like, how do the people around us value us? Is our worth valued by our society and the people that we love? So we know that there are a lot of ACEs out there. The question is, how are our kids doing before spring of 2020? Because we're going to talk about spring 2020 and what we think all of what's happened since January, from January to now, likely means in terms of mental health and trauma. So Washington State was actually one of the very first states to ask their own students about ACEs. So the first study that was done in Washington was in 2010. It's unfortunately not been repeated, but the data from adults suggests that this is actually very, very similar in terms of frequency. They superimposed the data they got from Washington State in terms of ACEs onto a class of 30 students. And when they did, they found that of that class of 30, 6 students had 0 ACEs, so 6. But 13 had 3 or more ACEs. Okay, so this graphic, I think, is really, really powerful in helping us to understand that ACEs are what's normal. Meaning that when we think about like trauma-informed schools or trauma-informed care, a lot of times people think, well, we just need to screen for ACEs and then make sure their interventions fit those kids. And what I'm telling you is that our schools, like, this is the default, this is actually what's normal, and all of our schools need to be trauma-informed in order to meet the needs of our students. And the really good news is that trauma-informed interventions and trauma-informed strategies benefit everybody. So making sure that routines are really predictable and that there's a lot of communication and expectations are stated clearly. Those are clear trauma-informed practices. Knowing all of your kids' names, positive greeting at the door, those types of practices, they benefit everybody, especially your kids that have trauma, but also your kids that have none. In terms of long-term trends, they don't look good for depression, anxiety, and suicidality for kids. So from 2010 to 2020, there has been a steady increase in rates of reported depression and rates of reported anxiety and suicidality. So this is SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration data. And so this is national data, and what you can see that trend line going up. In addition, there's a huge problem with access to care. So nationally, only 41% of adolescents with major depressive episode get any treatment at all for depression. That is not good. So a major depressive episode means that you are really deeply functionally impaired. Like, it is very difficult for you to do the daily routine, to focus, to study, to sleep, to eat, to take care of yourself, to learn. And our kids aren't necessarily getting the kind of interventions that they likely need. This is Healthy Youth Survey from Washington State on suicidality in 2018. And these are just really big numbers in terms of suicidal ideation, planning suicide, and attempted suicide. And I'll draw your eyes to the bottom. 12% of a class of 30 means you have 3 or 4 girls in your class who report having attempted suicide in the past year. And you have 2 to 3 boys that have also attempted suicide. So I think this is not news to anyone probably on the other side of the screen. I have teachers that will have lists of 40 kids essentially on quote unquote suicide watch. Like, this is a huge issue nationally. And it is affecting our Black, Indigenous, people of color populations the most. The biggest increase in suicidality and completed suicides is in Black youth. It also disproportionately affects our sexual minority youth, so that when you look at lesbian, gay, bisexual youth, there are substantially higher rates of suicidal ideation, planning suicide, and attempting suicide. This graphic, when I first saw it, so this is Healthy Youth Survey, this is Pierce County, but actually Washington State's looks really similar. This graphic kind of blew my mind. So these are rates of being anxious, nervous, or on edge. So that's the light pink. The dark pink is not being able to stop or control worrying. That is one of the core characteristics of an anxiety disorder. And what you'll see is it gets higher and higher from 8th to 12th grade. So our kids are getting more and more anxious as they are leaving our buildings. We are graduating a very anxious population into early adulthood. And the numbers from 18 to 25, they don't look better, actually. They kind of trend up too. So nearly 60% of our graduating seniors meet criteria for an anxiety disorder. They are incredibly stressed about their futures, right? And they're struggling with functioning. I very often have teachers tell me, long-term teachers that have taught for 20, 30 years, say like, something's different, because I feel like a lot of what I'm doing right now is a lot of social work. There's a lot of concern about mental health, and the data says you're not wrong. So between 2008 and 2018, there's been a 33% increase in kids reporting feeling hopeless, 35% increase in suicidal thoughts, and nearly 40% increase in planning suicide. So this isn't, it's not made up, it's actually happening. You are definitely being asked to engage more and more frequently with kids who are very emotionally distressed. And that was before January. So these are just some headlines that I pulled on June 13th as I was getting ready for this presentation. And it's just an overload. It's kind of an onslaught. And when we think about how digitally connected our kids are and what they're consuming, it's really intense, and it's really polarizing, and it's really scary right now. There's very limited available research on US youth and COVID-19 in terms of mental health. But coming from the UK, 32% of kids there reported that the pandemic made their mental health much worse. So they were really struggling. If they'd already had some mental health issues, it was making it a lot worse. Areas of China saw domestic violence reports triple. And I think, most counselors and teachers that I know are deeply concerned about the kids that aren't all that safe at home, and that the rates of reports to Child Protective Services have dropped, and people are actually really concerned about that, because kids are out of eyesight from other helpful adults right now. We know that, that the mental health of kids is often very closely related to the mental health of the adults in their lives, and US adults are really struggling. So this is COVID-19, this is before George Floyd and the massive racial justice movement. So 33% of adults fell into a high distress category in this Pew Research Center survey. 18% reported anxiety nearly all the time. 70% are concerned about the economy, and texts to the SAMHSA disaster hotline increased by 1,000%. So we definitely know that our adults are pretty stressed and really struggling in terms of anxiety and uncertainty about the future. The Washington State Department of Health sees COVID as the global pandemic as a natural disaster. SAMHSA has a model of how this usually works post-natural disaster. So if you look at this timeline, that essentially there's like the warning and the threat. For us, that would be November, December, January, maybe the beginning of February, impact. Then almost a heroic honeymoon phase where it's like, oh, you know, I'm home with my kids, we're safe, we're gonna be careful, and this is gonna pass, and this is gonna be over. And then there's a crash, and maybe you guys all know where your crash was. I definitely remember mine, where there's this reckoning, this realization that things are fundamentally different for the short term and very likely for the long term. The Washington Department of Health has outlined what they imagine this is going to look like based on other natural disasters and other similar types of experiences. I mean, I think COVID is novel to anyone in this generation, but they anticipate an increase in depression, grief, and loss in late summer. They anticipate an increase in suicide rates, domestic violence, and distress overall in September, yay. And that the holidays are going to compound or exacerbate some of these issues when they usually do. So you know this, you know that over the holidays can be a really, really stressful time for kids and for families. And that when they come back in January, very often there's this whole need to reset and kind of start over during the holiday season, like and just right after. In addition, we definitely know that in terms of COVID, there's just really gross disproportionality in terms of who it affects. COVID is so far from fair in terms of impact. We are not all in the same boat. We are in the same storm. Some folks are on super yachts and some just have the one oar. We know that COVID-19 has grossly disproportionately affected communities of color, especially the Black community. And that's actually very closely related to that ACEs pieces we were talking about before, and we will going forward in terms of those pre-existing conditions that are related to chronic stress. So this brings me to, I'm going to spend about 10 minutes on racism, trauma, and mental health. There are definitely people on the other side of the screen that you already know this and you live this, and I just want to give you full permission to step out of this. I do feel like dosing our exposure to the amount of horror is really important, that we need this balance between beauty and horror, and I think sometimes it's off right now. So this is just my invitation to you to take 10 minutes if you, this is a core component of your life experience, and if not, you know, feel free to stay with me. So in addition to COVID-19, this is coming from the APA director, the American Psychological Association, that we are also experiencing a pandemic of racism, that our nation is grappling with a very ugly history and present that has been very, very intense. It has been repeated, and it has been highly, what's the word I'm looking for? Graphic, honestly. So it's been very visually intense and graphic. I have to talk about race, even though race is actually a social construct. So I was trained in biology, and as a biologist, we actually have more genetic differences between people that are considered within our same race than those who aren't. There's much more, and this is a microbiologist, there's as much or more diversity and genetic difference within any racial group as there is between people of different racial groups. We have made this up on the basis of skin color, eye shape, and like hair, right? So that we're coming up with these values around these things. This belief that all members of each race possess characteristics or abilities specific to that race that distinguish it in some way from another, usually as inferior or superior. So this is now our social disease that we're coming back to school with all of our kids and our staff members being deeply affected by. So as I mentioned before, when we think about ACEs, we think about racism, we think about what's been happening over the last 2 months, and we think about trauma and COVID-19. that there is something called weathering, which is essentially this chronic exposure to social and economic disadvantage that leads to accelerated decline in physical health outcomes. So this was a hypothesis posited by Geronimus in 1996, a long time ago, when she was looking at maternity outcomes for Black women. And what she found was that regardless of income, actually, that Black women's telomeres, that their health outcomes were as if they were older than they actually were. So that we know that the exposure, the chronic exposure to disadvantage actually ages our bodies, and it is an ongoing chronic toxic stress. Moreover, it's been a really brutally difficult stretch for our communities of color. So if you look at the increase in anxiety and depression between 2019 and 2020, you'll see that the biggest increase has been in the Black community, going from 8% reporting anxiety in 2019 to 34% in 2020. Same with depression. And that these events like George Floyd's death, like Ahmaud Arbery, like Breonna Taylor, they result in a very significant spike even in that week as it's measured. This is from the Washington Post, and I believe this is the Census Bureau data. But even within a week, you'll see these spikes because these events have been so distressing and upsetting. So that's a lot to consume, for us to consume. I think right now, our goal is to figure out how to take what we know and what we've seen and what we've experienced and what we've consumed and translate it into actionable change, and to help our kids digest what's going on in a way that empowers them and helps them to make change. So this is James Baldwin. He says, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." Which is all to say that when we're talking about resilience, I think resilience is critically important, and I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about it, but the number one goal for anyone doing trauma or resilience work is to reduce harm and exposures. So I'm not advocating that we develop resilience to racism. The first goal is to actually dismantle it. And then from there, right, to do other interventions that we know are related to expanding resilience. So when we think about prevention, we want to be reducing harm and exposures first, where our goal is to increase regulation and coping skills, to enhance positive identity formation. Who am I? What am I capable of? What's my value in the world? Can I love and be loved? Increase tenacity, competence, and increased connection to other people. And of course, intervention is actually exactly the same. It's just more intensive. So that these are really what we're going for when we're enhancing resilience and we're trying to build these things. And you think about how schools help kids and families to do this. So the Center for Youth Wellness in San Francisco, that used to be headed by Nadine Burke-Harris, Dr. Burke-Harris, who's now the California Surgeon General, really went through all of the literature available on resilience, and they pulled out essentially these 6 areas rose to the top consistently in all of these research studies. These ones on the left here, sleep, exercise, and nutrition, that's regulation. That's physiological regulation. And what we know is that sleep, exercise, and nutrition each independently affect mood states. So if it was last summer and you had 2 weeks consecutively where you slept beautifully and you had not very much stress and you've gone on vacation, you came back and everything's good. And then for the 2 weeks after that, I interrupted your sleep. So for 2 weeks, I consecutively interrupted your sleep. You would have higher rates of anxiety and depression. You'd also be really mad at me, justifiably so. But that sleep by itself impacts mood. We also know that exercise definitely impacts mood. That research base is massive. So being outside it's a twofer, because actually being outside is by itself beneficial to mental health. But that exercise piece is huge. It has an effect size for depression that is pretty similar to going to therapy. So it's a really, really big deal. It also really enhances learning. And you think about the difficulty doing some of those things with COVID, right? Getting out, going to playgrounds, what is it that our kids are doing for exercise? And then nutrition. There's an increased understanding of the gut biome. I don't know if you guys have heard of that before, but essentially what we eat directly impacts our mood state too. So that we're learning more about that. That research is in its infancy at this point, but we do know that eating well does a lot to change our physiology, essentially, overall. I think about all these things, and I also think about our staff rooms, right? I think about food that's offered in the staff rooms and the things that we consume sometimes in the efforts to feel better that very likely make us feel worse and guilty, right? So mindfulness is another. A lot of schools are doing mindfulness pretty actively. The way that I conceptualize mindfulness that needs to really be expanded upon is non-judgmental curiosity. So what's going on with me? I haven't been eating well. I didn't want to sleep last night. I didn't want to talk to my friends. Like, what's happening and what do I need? And that piece of it is sometimes left out of mindfulness practices, but I think is really critical. We tend to instead fall into cycles of judgment about how we're coping or how we're feeling. This other piece, healthy relationships, that's what y'all are for, is to help develop and grow and strengthen and teach people how to navigate conflict, how to make friendships, how to tolerate it when your boyfriend breaks up with you. And then mental health here too, which we'll spend some time talking about. Tons of data on this. My partner hates this slide, but when I think about trauma and I think about trauma-informed practices, I think sometimes we forget that we actually know what we would want or what we need. And if we think about this group of educators being on an airplane, the people that are on the other side of the screen, we're on an airplane and it hits really vicious turbulence. Everybody on the airplane has probably had slightly different experiences with flying. Maybe some people have flown a lot. Maybe some people know a lot about aerodynamics and turbulence and aren't concerned at all. Maybe somebody else lost someone in a tragic accident. We don't know. But in this airplane, we've got all of us adults in there and we're scared, right? There's some alarm, some reason for alarm. So what do we need from our pilot and our flight crew? We need them to anticipate our needs and create safe environments, okay? So we need them to go over the safety rules, even if we didn't listen at all. We need to know that they did it. We don't want to be on this plane with the turbulence banging around and be like, you know what they forgot to do? I didn't see them do the thing with the thing and the thing. You know, we want there to be routines. We want there to be practice. We want to know that they know what to do, okay? We want them to maintain composure in the face of fear. If they're running around the airplane like this, we're not feeling very good about our chances on this here airplane. We want them to respond without personalizing, panicking, becoming defensive, blaming other people. And we want them to perform to the best of their ability when they're needed the most. Okay, so to step up and to perform with grace. To lean on and build the strengths of others, empower and support. This is the where's a doctor? Is there a doctor on the plane? Is there a nurse on the plane? Could you hold her head? Could you go get some ice? That we are able to enlist and maximize our resources. We're basically looking for Sully. I want someone who's gonna land this plane on the Hudson if it calls for it. Like, we're really looking for Sully. Composure, knew exactly what to do. He's like, I got this, okay? This gentleman is Steven Slater. So he was a flight attendant for JetBlue. We all have an inner Steven Slater. A woman wasn't getting her. She hit him with her bag when she was trying to put it away. He got really frustrated. He grabbed 2 beers, quit over the PA, and pulled the emergency slide. And went right down it. He didn't have a job for long afterwards, but you know, in that moment, he had his vindication. So we're looking for Sully, right? Even if we have in our heads and in our hearts a little bit of Steven Slater in us. To get much more philosophical, this is Camus. We all carry within us places of exile. Our crimes are ravages. Our task is not to unleash them on the world, it's to transform them in ourselves and others. So this is my plea to you to do the work for yourself first. I want to introduce you if you haven't met her before. So this is Laura Vandernoot-Lipsky, and she is a wildly talented, deeply thoughtful speaker, presenter, teacher, trainer, who does a lot of work in trauma and attending to, her book's called Trauma Stewardship. The very cool thing is that she just released her book. So this is it. And this is probably my 4th copy because I keep giving it away. And I've had it for years, but she just released the whole text available online for free. So Erin is going to put that in the chat so that you guys can read that too. And we're going to watch her speak on how we work to metabolize trauma. This video is about 9 minutes long.
So, but this is what happens, that over time, what you're exposed to affects your entire worldview. There's so many ways that we can be affected individually and collectively by exposure to vicarious trauma, compassion fatigue, secondary trauma. Many people call it many different things. But this exposure affects all of us so differently. What I have found through the privilege of getting to work with everyone from zookeepers to judges, school teachers to nurses, ecologists to activists, is that it is breathtaking, the commonalities of how one is affected, right? So some of the ways we find you feel like you're not doing enough, right? So here they're saying we just haven't been flapping them hard enough. So this is where you feel like you're not doing enough. You constantly feel like you should be doing more, right? Another one could be morale. So they're saying, I see you've done time, so working in a cubicle shouldn't be a problem. So I work with organizations nationally, internationally, and one of the things we find so much is the morale, the very, very quickly eroding morale, right? Here he's saying, I bark at everything. You can't go wrong that way. So hypervigilance. Many people can relate to a sense of hypervigilance. This is where you lose your ability to flow in, really fluidly in between your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system. You become in kind of in hyperarousal. I had a colleague say to me, she was a child support enforcement officer, and she said to me, I can tell you which ones of my son's friends are going to grow up to not pay their child support. And her son was 5 years old, right? Here he's saying, no, not there, please, that's where I'm going to put my head. So exhaustion is something many people can relate to. And not the exhaustion before you work out, but this is an exhaustion where you are tired in your soul, you are tired in your spirit, you are tired throughout your bone marrow. All of your ancestors were tired people, right? There's the avoidance. He's saying, no, Thursday's out, how about never? Is never good for you? This is where the best part of your day at work is where you don't have to do your job, right? And then there's the avoidance in our personal lives. She's saying, it's too late, Roger, they've seen us. Cynicism, many of you can relate to. They're saying, but she'll come down eventually, and she'll come down hard. So what many of you might be able to relate to is not the pure cynicism, but the cynical humor, right? And then anger and rage. She's saying it's a new antidepressant. Instead of swallowing it, you throw it at anyone who appears to be having a good time. And here he's saying, I can cure your back problem, but there's a risk you'll be left with nothing to talk about. So the other thing we see here is the externalizing that happens. When more and more people are asked to do more with fewer resources, we see this whole seduction to externalizing. So this is where you start saying to yourself, I would actually be fine taking care of my loved ones if I could have different loved ones to take care of. Or people say, I would love coming to my job every day if my immediate supervisor would just retire, right? And then there's blind spots that we have. So one of the things that we notice a lot that people have is blind spots. I'll share the story to illustrate it. This is a water bottle. It says the Oregon Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. It's one of approximately, over 100 water bottles I have in my home that have been gifted to me like incredible programs that many of you are involved with, right? And every water bottle I have in my home has something stenciled on the side like this, which has, domestic violence, sexual assault, HIV/AIDS, infant mortality, flood, hurricane, tornado, tsunami, death, destruction, right? And I'm just thinking, this is great. I got water bottles. Every day is Earth Day here. This is fantastic. But what it also means is these are the water bottles that go with my kids to swim meets, basketball tournaments, soccer games, right? And I'm not thinking anything of it. But then I was unpacking my child's lunch some time ago, and I noticed that at school she found the provisions to kind of hack over the word sexual, right? So she's not exactly old enough to know what sexual violence is. She's definitely old enough to know you're not sitting at the lunch table at school with a water bottle that says domestic and sexual violence on it, right? I don't know why, but I decided to tell this story at a very large conference of police officers, and when the break came, a police officer came up to me 2 centimeters from my face, $20 in her hand, and said, go get your kid a proper water bottle. So I feel like things have gone very wrong in life when you've got the cops giving you cash, instructing you on parenting, right? And then dogma and self-righteousness, okay? So here he's saying, your mother and I are separating because I want what's best for the country, and your mother doesn't. And then addictions, which many of us can relate to. She's saying, of course I drink during the day. I'm way too tired to drink at night. And numbing. So here he's saying, could we up the dosage? I still have feelings. One of the things I want to say to us about numbing, it is incredibly seductive with the volume and the intensity of suffering on the planet today. It is incredibly tempting and seductive to become numb. And what I want to offer to you is how critical it is that we continue to strive to cultivate our capacity to be present. One of the reasons we want so much to be present is we remind ourselves with everything that is out of our control every single day, one of the things that remains in our control at any given time is your ability to bring your exquisite quality of presence to what you are doing and to how you are being. That presence, we know, can interrupt the systematic oppression which is causing so much harm and can transform the trauma that is arising. It is very easy to get in that place of you have no idea what my life, if you lived here, if you did my job, if you saw what I saw, and that's when we call on our ancestors, and that's when we call on so many people who have come before us who remind us that when they could not change anything external, they were able to shift everything as a result of where they put their focus. And again, I don't know any of you personally, but the assumption I'm going to make is none of us would go up against any of these folks, right? We're not going to, oh, Desmond, I know things got rough for you in South Africa, what with apartheid and all, but here in Washington State, we got a few things going on, right? Here he's saying, this is the barn where we keep our feelings. If a feeling comes to you, bring it here and lock it up. The other reason I want to bring us back to presence is I want to remind you that while I know we have so many different life circumstances, I believe we have a shared ethic of doing no harm. If you are numb, you will not be able to gauge whether or not you're doing harm. And if we believe in what Chief Sealth talks about with the web of life, or what Martin Luther King talked about with the single garment of destiny, you all know so well that there are so many parts of this web that are profoundly compromised. And many of you are bringing heart and soul to tremendous sacrifice to tend to parts of this web that are compromised. If the way you're doing that out there means in any way you are neglecting your immediate part of the web, cutting off circulation to your immediate part of the web, lighting your immediate part of the web on fire, it is not ethical practice, it's not integrity-based practice, it's not sustainable. The other piece with numbing out, and what we've learned from so many people who've come before us and in so many traditions, is you don't get to selectively numb. So if you're going to numb out your sorrow, you're also going to numb out any possible happiness you can have. If you are going to numb out the heartbreak, you're going to numb out any ability to survive noticing what is beautiful. And the other thing is your mind and body and spirit will keep trying to bring itself back to a full range of feelings of that whole equanimity and that spaciousness. Which means that's why, you can work on coalition after coalition of peace building, and then you get in the lunch line or on the freeway and you don't let anybody merge in front of you, right? And we defend that. We say how I conduct myself on that freeway or when I'm getting my food at lunch has nothing to do with the other work I'm doing. Howard Thurman reminds us, don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive and then go and do that, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. So we remember that with the magnitude of suffering at play on the planet right now, we are in desperate need of folks who have the wherewithal and who have the courage to be present. We know from that place of presence, it is possible to aspire to do no harm. It is possible to transform whatever trauma arises, and it is possible to continue to work to dismantle the systematic oppression which is causing such a legacy of suffering. From that place of presence, we know that it is possible to metabolize whatever arises in life, the waves of life which will continue to present to us what they present. There is a way to metabolize that and integrate it so that over time you find that it contributes to your awakening. That the longer we get to walk on this planet, we find we have deeper compassion, vaster humility, and we are able to come up and out of the narrow places. And from that place of cultivated presence, we remember that it is possible to create and to sustain an ability to be truly transformative. Thank you.
So that's Laura Van Lipsky. I hope you enjoyed it. I love watching her speak. She is local. She's from Washington State, and she's here regularly. She did a big training in Tacoma about 2 years ago. She was up in Everett, I think same time, about 2 years ago, but she's definitely worth seeing in person. And her book also reinforces a lot of what she said. It's right out of her text as well. So it's definitely something I've read several times and continue to metabolize. Basically, we need your exquisite quality of presence in September. We need people who have come alive. She mentioned Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl wrote an absolutely beautiful book called Man's Search for Meaning. He was a psychiatrist who survived Auschwitz. And his book, Man's Search for Meaning, is really about his reflections on human behavior while in one of the worst conditions that humans have ever subjected other humans to ever in the course of history. So what he noticed while he was there were that even the guards behaved differently depending on who they were and what their decision making was, and also the prisoners, that he saw some folks who were almost feral, doing anything they could to survive, and he also saw acts of tremendous courage and compassion and grace. So Stephen Covey, who was an author, this is often attributed to Viktor Frankl, but it's actually a summary of the book. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom and our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our happiness. So this idea of stimulus and response and building out that space and being able to be fully capable of seeing what's going on with us, what's happening for us, what do we need, and making a decision. And sometimes it feels like that space is real small. With little kids, it's real small. It doesn't really exist, right? So that's why a lot of our interventions for little guys are really behaviorally based. But we're working with kids and with ourselves constantly to build out that space so that we have freedom and we have power to choose a response that aligns with our own value system, our own integrity, and will be best for us and those around us as we go forward. So when we think about principles of a trauma-informed approach and think about what that's going to look like at the systems level for ourselves as educators, as consultants, as counselors, as teachers, as administrators, what are these principles? This comes from SAMHSA from 2018. And these ideas that we need to hold these things in building protocols, in building practices. Number one is safety, physical and emotional safety. Number two is trustworthiness and transparency. Number three, peer support, collaboration and mutuality, empowerment, voice and choice, and recognition of historical and ongoing systematic traumatization. This is actually the framework that I'm going to use. I'm going to build out from in our second hour together. I really think that in large part, trauma-informed practices are a mindset, and that these practices arise from that mindset. The basic assumption that people do well, that they want to do well, is really core. So to assume that people do want to do well, your parents want their kids to be successful. There's something like a skills deficit or a crisis or a resource need or a mental health issue that might be getting in their way. People have tremendous aspiration and strengths that we can really build on. We have to identify them and strengthen them. In addition, behavior has meaning and function, so we're really looking for both. Our goal is to not assume that we know what's happening, but to really take an analytical perspective. What's going on? What could this mean? What purpose does it serve? Valuing the person while addressing the behavior, so not discarding the person if there's behavior that you struggle with or don't understand. Everybody needs help and connection. This is a very fundamental, basic human need. And that asking for help is really a sign of strength and reflectiveness. And there actually is research on this. So in our leaders, the leaders that actually do turn towards and seek help or seek expertise when there's an area that they don't understand or aren't fully versed in, that actually that engenders a great deal of respect and trust in the people around them. So I'm actually right on time, which is shocking to me. We're going to do a breakout for about 15 minutes. And my question for you is to really think about what is your building district plan to address youth mental health and trauma in the 2020-21 school year. And you may be here because you don't know what that is. You want to have some ideas going forward. Totally fine. Think about what it was last year, and think about these areas of safety, engagement, attachment, strengthening relationships, reaching families. Think about what you would want it to look like going into next year. What would you do to address some of these areas? You also have opportunity right now to ask me some questions. I think I'm only on time because I speak so quickly, and I told you it was a content dump, but it was high high velocity today. And what, if anything, surprised you? So think about these things as you enter your breakout groups. So you'll do the groups for 15 minutes, and then we're going to review what you sent back to us so that we can respond to it going forward from there.
And we're pulling all the groups back.
Lauren, I had a question for you.
Sure.
I'm very nervous to ask it, but I'm just going to go for it.
Yeah.
I guess I would first like to start out by saying, like, what happened to Floyd is not at all okay in my mind. No. But I've had some conversations with like close friends, and they will say things like, well, he was on drugs, or he was, you know, doing this, and they don't talk about the other side of it. What is a good response? I try to explain, like, yeah, but that's part of the, like, the white privilege problem, and that doesn't, you know, mean he should have died. And I don't know what to say when people say those things to me. Do you have any good advice?
For me, I always return to data. So I'm actually a forensically, training psychologist in large part. I mean, I think it's hard because it engenders such a big emotional response, right? That the punishment, the idea that the punishment for, a forged $20 bill or even substance use should not be death, right? Like that's Absolutely. The fundamental, I think that was what triggered the amount of outrage and pain, right? And in large part, and then it feels really differential. But I think, just as a psychologist and someone who's clearly obsessed with data, as you guys saw the whole first part of this presentation, is that it's not just policing. So it's policing, it's DA discretion, it's sentencing, it's jury selection, it's healthcare in prisons. Like it's essentially the idea that two people coming from the same place enter the system, at the same time, and that the outcomes are grossly disproportionate, and that's been shown over and over and over and over again. And to me, that's what I understand the movement to really be. Like that was the catalyst for it in large part, and it has obviously gotten bigger since then. But that's a big piece of it, right?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I'll need to look up some more facts to help me. Thank you.
I honestly think sometimes the statistics are great, but sometimes it takes a story.
Yeah.
And almost everybody's read Harry Potter, and I'm always like, remember at the end of Harry Potter when Harry and Hermione and Ron are all doing things that we would consider evil, but they're doing them for good reasons because they're opposing such a big evil. And I said, why can we understand that and we can't understand what's going on in our nation today?
Yeah.
What's wrong with us?
I think the polarization is big, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. This idea that it's all or nothing is actually pretty detrimental to functional change, right? So we'll talk more about that kind of going forward. And maybe that's me also moving away from it because I'm trying not to upset somebody, like moving into these data pieces. But I agree, yeah. Stories are incredibly powerful.
Yeah, and sorry if I offended anyone. That was not my intent at all.
I'm so glad you asked. No, it's good. Are we ready?
Sorry.
Any other questions? Okay. Let me see if my,
Oh, I have a question.
Sure.
I was curious if you have any curriculum that you recommend for social emotional learning in a school-based setting. I teach high school ELL, and yeah, I'm wondering if you have any recommendation.
I think high school is really hard right now. This is actually something that I'm pretty focused on in my own individual world, is that a lot of the social emotional learning curricula are really focused on K to 6 and then extended K, 6 to 8, but it's not actually, I mean, honestly, the language and the examples that high schoolers are just going to dismiss in large part. So I think that part's really hard right now. I don't have one offhand that I would say like, oh, this is super solid. My goal is actually to help build something that's K to 12, that is both SEL and then the mental health piece, but I haven't done that yet. And I have not found one that I feel like is it, if that makes sense. So that's not a great answer. I can send you some of the possibilities. One of my foci is just that the idea that it shouldn't switch language in high school, that all of these concepts, all of these skill sets, we should be using the same language, the same strategies, because it needs to be reinforced year after year after year, all the way through 12th grade. It just needs to be adapted to really fit high school students. And as of right now, I've not found something that goes K to 12 that's really cohesive and actually hits that secondary, their issues are different and they're intense, and it's like high emotionality, and the risk levels are different, and the things they're talking about are very different. So I haven't found that personally myself. I do know that Second Step now goes through high school, and that a lot of schools use it K to 8. I don't know how your kids would feel about it. Ready? Let's give it a shot. Nope, I guess this thing's totally not going to work like this. Okay. So I think when COVID hit and our schools closed, I think there was a pretty massive recognition of some fundamental changes in education. There's this critical need for a backup online learning system. So some of our northern states, northeastern states that have tons of snow have developed this online learning system curricula where when the snow happens and they have a snow day, they can transition to online learning immediately so that they don't end up going to school in mid-August, right? So that there are systems that have done this because they've had to, but man, do we need it. And it turns out everybody needs it. There's also this critical need for digital access and infrastructure. If you could have heard the number of times that I shouted, Bezos lives here, Gates lives here. Why are we doing this now? It was many. And so this idea of not having access and infrastructure, this is a problem we've known about for a while, but I think it was really magnified post-COVID. We're very aware of a differential impact of closure on children and families, differential impact on educators and on districts. And I think it was made really clear that schools provide some fundamental basic needs for kids. The first thing that schools did immediately, the first focus of OSPI was food. And I think that was eye-opening for a lot of the country to recognize how critically important schools are in delivering food to kids and students with disabilities, and making sure that parents had support for those needs in some way, shape, or form, which I would argue has probably been extremely challenging and probably not met a lot of those kids' needs. And also social and emotional and learning needs, that this is what our schools do, and that we weren't able to access that in the same way. So I want to do a Zoom poll. I'm just really curious, and I'm curious to see what you guys think too. What do you guys think next year is going to look like? Do you think it will be likely in person all year? Do you think it's going to start full-time in person, then shift to hybrid or virtual if we have a second wave? Or do you think it's going to be planned hybrid in person and virtual? So there's going to be like AA, BB days, or mostly all virtual learning. So here's a little poll. I'm just curious about how you guys think it's going to go. All right, slowing down. So interesting. So most people thought that it will be planned hybrid, in person and virtual. Almost like very few people think you guys are going to be in person all year next year. So that's something to think about and hold. Very few people think it's going to be like that, which means there's going to be either, it will be consistently split in terms of hybrid or in person, or it could shift mid-year, which means we're really going to have to think carefully about how we're partnering with families. And I'm going to spend a fair amount of time on that. Okay. So one of the things that I think is going to happen as soon as we go back is there's going to be this massive tension between desperately trying to make up the academic content that kids have missed and the desperate need to establish and assess like where our kids and families are doing and build relationships. I am seriously pleading with all of you to do your best to give yourself and your staff permission to focus first on relationships. What is going on with your kids? How are they doing? Where are their friendships? Are they connected? What's going on with their family? There are people who lost businesses, who still aren't employed. I mean, there's all kinds of things that have happened between the last time your building laid eyes on these kids and now. Happen within their families, happen within their communities. So really, really giving yourself permission to focus first on the relationship, because our research shows that if you don't, your kids are not going to learn that much. The other big part of that is if we go back to that poll, you are very confident. It seems as though most people believe that there's going to be this split hybrid in-person learning. I'm going to argue that you are most likely to get kids engaged with you if you have solid relationships with them and with their families, so that their access to and their ability to utilize virtual learning is going to be much stronger if you have those relationships. It's not really optional in my mind to have a lot of communication with families this coming year, given what we expect to happen. In addition, I taught about 2 months ago, I think I was teaching to a group of counselors, and one of the counselors was just really worried, really stressed, very upset, thinking about the amount of trauma that kids have experienced and families have experienced, and essentially how acutely distressed kids were going to be coming back into the buildings. I think a lot of people feel that way. My message back to you is that going back to the structure, routine, and social opportunities that schools provide, it will be good for the vast majority of your kids. They want to go back to school. Most of them want to go back to school. Their parents really want them to go back to school, right? So just thinking about that, it is very likely that even if it looks different, if we are able to convey to kids that we are going to keep them safe and we are going to engage with them and we're going to play with them, we're going to teach with them, we're going to learn with them, it will be good for them. So I told you we were going to use the SAMHSA framework in thinking about what some of our transition back to school could look like. I'm going to start with recognition of historical and ongoing systematic traumatization. It's last on the SAMHSA list, but I'm not running out of time for this one. So a little bit about your kids. I don't know if you're aware that they're called Generation Z if they're born after 1990, and your littles are called Generation Alpha, which is sort of funny, but that's what they're called. When we look at their makeup, this is the first generation in American history that is majority Black, Indigenous, people of color. So 52% of your kids identify that way or multiracial. 2/3 of them believe in systemic racism. The majority of your students want government to do more to solve problems. So it's interesting that like in terms of like the relationship between age and wanting government to do more, young kids are like, we want them to do more. And the older folks are, we want them to do way less. So, but they really want government to solve more problems. Over half of them have friends or close friends who are of a different race than their own. The majority support gender neutral pronouns, and they're much more likely to support gay marriage and LGBTQ rights. And they are on track to be the most well-educated generation ever. So they're going to spend a lot of time in schools, and they are also digital natives. So 95% of 13 to 17-year-olds have a smartphone. 97% of them engage with the top 3 social media platforms. So we're going to talk about what that means. So when we think about if these are our kids, how do you think they're responding to Ahmaud Arbery, to George Floyd, to Breonna Taylor on average, on balance? Well, what I'm going to say is that they have super strong feelings, right? So they have really, really strong feelings about this. Almost all of them do. And they are consuming right now vast amounts of information via social media. And the amount of information, the type of information that they are consuming is not what's making the evening news. They are consuming stuff that is really graphic, very provocative, and really upsetting a lot of times. With my own clients, my own teenage clients in private practice, I'm continually working on media dosing, like slowing it down, figuring out how you feel. Are you engaging with the outer ring, right? Things that you don't have control over that are causing a lot of distress. So I do think this is what's happening in your kids' houses right now. Okay, there's a lot of communication about a lot of these issues. Which leads me to wonder how comfortable you feel leading conversations about race and equity. Remember, this is an anonymous poll, but I'm just curious, how comfortable do you feel leading some of these conversations in your classroom? So the poll will show up, I hope. We'll think about what it might feel like for you. Maybe not. I don't know if I can cause the poll to start. Oh, maybe I can. Hold on. There we go. Okay, do you guys see it? Is it showing up? Okay.
Yes.
So just look at it. So how comfortable are you leading conversations? Very comfortable, pretty comfortable, not very, I really don't feel comfortable at all. And then when you're done with that, there's actually a follow-up question, which is what do you need to be more comfortable leading some of these conversations? Give it a couple minutes. All right. Okay, so most people feel like there's a range in here, right? So this is a bell curve. In terms of, so 41% said comfortable, 38% said not very, that was next most common, 25% said pretty comfortable. When we look at this one, what do you need to be more comfortable leading some of these conversations about race and equity? Modeling and mentoring, formal training, or PD, greater opportunity or dedicated time in class, school-wide coordinated conversations, curricula, book clubs, things like that. Okay. I'm just wondering how you're processing this information. If it makes you feel as though you're not alone in whatever your position is, it seems like people are kind of all over the map. What this leads me to immediately jump to in my own head is if you do have folks in your building who are very comfortable or are facilitating some of these things, is figuring out how to lean on expertise and support with a caveat. I've got a caveat on that. Okay. All right, so I have a few recommendations as we think about addressing systematic oppression and traumatization. So number one is to ask, inquire, and hold space, is to give your kids space to talk about it. When we are faced with subjects and content that is stressful for us and makes us anxious, we are very pulled as adults to give kids information. And what I can tell you right off the bat is your teenagers don't want to hear it from you. Not initially. They want to be able to process some of these things and to be able to come to conclusions themselves. So most teenagers, they really will hold information and conclusions if they can get there themselves. So a lot of the goal of the work around all of this is being able to hold space, to be present, and to ask questions of them that help them to communicate with each other and enhance understanding. So to really be cognizant of that pull to just content dump onto kids or to correct their thinking, but to help them correct each other's thinking and to expand really their thinking, not correct, okay? That's really what I think the goal is. And as I talk to parents about this, it's really striking because some of the teenagers that I work with, some of their parents are educators or are highly educated, and they actually have not had any direct conversations with their kids about these topics at all. And my recommendation is just ask. So what have you been seeing? What have you been watching? What have you been reading? What has it felt like to you? What do you want to have happen? What do you think needs to change? How have people changed things in the past? What do you know about how social change has taken place in the past, right? So to really ask and engage them. You have historical knowledge. You have a huge, vast experience that they don't have. But you almost have to be invited into it to offer perspective. The other big piece is that if you're, and this was true, this has been true for my own clients too, this has unearthed deep, deep feelings of pain and early memories around race in this country for your kids of color. So almost uniformly, I would be surprised if that wasn't the case. Number two is to allow people of color the space not to talk about it. It's exhausting. Right, so to give people the ability to step back from it, that's not their responsibility right now, and to be able to not be enlisted to be the expert in the room all the time. Okay. Tell the stories of organizing, activism, courage, change. Kids don't have that context. So what has this looked like before? What worked, what didn't? What was challenging? What's the gray area in all of these approaches? What have been the strengths? What have been the things that have been critiqued and how? Number four is to really celebrate Black love, talent, resilience, ingenuity, brilliance, right? So we're getting just this onslaught of horror in large part, right? And tragedy, and to really try to counterbalance that, like with all of the incredible things that the Black community has brought to this country. And to also do that with all of our communities. So think really critically about like, what do your walls of your classroom look like? Are they representative? Do you actually acknowledge that the land you're standing on, like what tribe it came from and what the indigenous practices were at that time? So it's just thinking about how do we be much more inclusive in our discussions about strength, right? And resilience. Also, to really spotlight some areas of hope and progress, your kids can do that. So asking your teenagers, so what have you seen change? Do you think it's good change? And sometimes they can shift their focus from everything that's wrong, because teenagers in particular are really good at seeing injustice. And then they just wonder, if adults can see it, like, why don't you do something about it? That's their next thought. So if they're really focused, they're also making sure that their lens is broad enough to see areas of hope and progress. And even just the demographics suggest that, that people are much more open to each other and each other's experience, where we have a very global young population. Attending to language and narrative and how you're talking about these things, what types of words you're using, asking your kids what they're comfortable with, and what stories you're telling. Because a lot of times we end up telling a particular story about a particular population and lose sight of all of the other stories of their culture, their nation, and their people. This other piece is to really work to be inclusive, engaging, and validating. We are not cancel culture, we are school. So our job is to build community. It's to build community with staff and to build community with kids, and to get to a place where we can talk about very difficult subjects or pain with each other in a way that enhances our understanding and connection to each other. And then this last one is really big. So I think teenagers right now in particular, and young kids, they know that some people are protesting. Some kids disagree with protesting, they don't want to protest. Some kids have older parents and they're worried about the COVID risk. Some kids don't have the opportunity to do that at all, but they can feel very helpless in their own experience. So what is it that they could do that would actually be helpful in whatever it is that they're seeing right now? The second piece is really focused on supporting and elevating your teachers of color. So teachers of color are disproportionately important to youth of color, particularly Black boys. Our research has been pretty consistent on that. They're a very small percentage of our national teaching force and leave earlier. And our teachers of color are often subjected to what they call the invisible tax. So this is worth being mindful of as you think about these areas. They tend to be asked to handle more discipline. That there is an implicit expectation to discuss race and racism, and they're often enlisted as the equity experts in the room to do a lot of that work, and that they are tapped to be advocates for marginalized youth. And I think given the amount of pain, frankly, that a lot of our Black, Indigenous, people of color staff are experiencing, that the invisible tax is too much. It was before and it definitely is now. So I'm going to move into safety. Does anyone have any thoughts, questions about that they want to get to now, since I want to make sure that there's space for that if need be? I don't know if Erin, you can hear me. Is there anything that came up you'd want me to address? All right. So when we think about safety, we're thinking about both physical and emotional safety. And I got a mask up here because that's our new world, right? So the OSPI says we're masked and our kids are masked. When we think about all of the PPE and the procedures, I'm curious from this Zoom polling, how COVID safe do you feel returning to school in person right now? Because I think this is pretty different depending on your risk category. So A is very safe with PPE and social distancing, mostly safe. I feel okay. I'm worried. I really don't feel safe going back in person. That's a huge range.
There was a lot of really good dialogue, Lauren, but no specific questions that I could see directly. So, but lots of good dialogue in the chat box.
Oh, good, okay. All right. Okay. So I think if you take a look at the poll results, that mostly it landed at B, mostly safe, some concerns about safety, but that it wasn't a huge majority. What this means is that your colleagues have a huge variation in how safe they feel returning to school. Sometimes one of the things that we do when we're working on being confident and brave to do something that's a little bit scary is that we try to minimize any risk. And I encourage you not to do that with your colleagues, that they, what you see here is that a lot of your staff, a lot of your colleagues do have some very legitimate concerns about going back to school with COVID. Oops, let me close in. So these are just pictures of schools that have gone back. So actually this gentleman makes face shields. I think there are a fair number of teachers that may choose face shields, but that our kids are supposed to wear masks every day. Americans are not used to this. This is not how we roll. And I think that even the politicization, I don't know if I said that right, but of masks as a physical safety an intervention speaks to that we really don't like wearing masks at all. And I think there is a lot of concern about what they mean for our kids. The truth is, this is one of those places where I think we're going to have to move towards acceptance of something, whether we like it or not. This is definitely what the mandate is coming back to school. So our job is to work really hard to send the message to our kids that this is about taking care of me and this is about taking care of you. This is, I'm working to take care of your grandma and you're working to take care of my mom. This is the way that we are working towards empathy and caretaking of our community. I definitely know that even in the breakout room, a lot of people don't know what their school's plan is. I think that's kind of actually the default right now. I don't know of a district that's rolled it out and said, okay, this is exactly what people are going to start, and this is where elementary is going to start, and we're doing passing periods like this, and lunch is going to look like this. Like, we don't have the actual schematics of what that's going to be yet. When that does start to take shape, I really think it's important to focus on practicing what this could look like. So when you think about like a staff back to school day or week, go through it, go through all of it. Do the, pretend to do the temperature checks, do the passing periods, figure out what it would look like in your classroom, but be really familiar with what it looks like for you guys before the kids come back to school and it's mayhem, right? Because it is gonna look different, and there is gonna be, if you think about the first day of school in general, there's a fair amount of anxiety and like 10 kindergartners crying. So like that's like standard operating procedure. And you think about adding this piece too, making sure that you are as comfortable as you probably can be with these new protocols. The other thing is that, if a teacher spikes a fever of any kind, and again, like flu didn't disappear either. So it's definitely possible that we can get sick with other things, that you may need to prepare for quarantine and illness. So, do you need to at all times have 2 weeks of lesson plans? I don't know what that looks like yet, but thinking about these things and kind of going through it, and how do you share that type of curricula with each other and support each other if that happens to take place. We talked about this, framing safety as collective, and then really reviewing school-wide expectations and adjusting them if needed based on COVID. That you're going to have different, some of your expectations might change a little bit based on what COVID looks like, your protocols look like at school. I hammered on this already. Thinking about problem-solving challenges to homework digital learning, I don't know how much time you have had with your colleagues to talk about that, like what's worked, what's pulled kids in. We're going to spend a little bit more time on it in a minute. And then really focusing also on spending more time playing and connecting. If you don't know how to play with the mask on, with the face shield on, I totally get it. That's a great place to enlist like your PE specialists, the people that have masters in team building. What's possible that could get kids engaged in playing that might not require touch or excessive sanitation afterwards. I had some questions about social emotional learning and curricula. What I really want to make sure that I mention is that there's been a recent critique of SEL that I think is really valid. That this idea of the way that SEL is taught a lot of times really is focused on reducing expressions of anger, right? So maladaptive expressions of anger. I think what the risk is there is that we are invalidating anger that is related to injustice, like real injustice, and it's not actually serving us. We're not teaching kids how to transform anger into action in a way that it's useful for them. So that anger is one of these, it's part of the reason why our country is shifting so fast right now in so many different ways. That it's a very transformative emotion and it's really important and it deserves space, not suppression. Like our goal is not to suppress anger. We don't want to get rid of anger. We want to be able to express it and use it in ways that are adaptive and result in change. I have a colleague who talks about, his name is Vincent Perez, and he's wonderful. If you ever have the chance to be taught by him, he specializes in equity. But he likens anger to a can of gasoline. So with a can of gasoline, it is wildly flammable and incredibly powerful. You can take this can of gasoline, I can take this big can of gas, and I can, if I put it in my car and if I use it the right way, I can drive my car down to Northern California and have a wonderful vacation. I can use it. Or I can light a match and blow myself up and everybody else. So it's really about the expression and the utilization of anger in a constructive way. We are not trying to get rid of it. We're not trying to get rid of any of our emotions. We're trying to understand them, use them, metabolize them, and help them make the changes that we need in ourselves and in the world around us. So this leads me to thinking about adult behavior, right? So that if we think about emotional safety, because we're shifting into emotional safety, and this predictability, that the more predictable our environments are, the safer we feel. That's why the last 4 months have been bananas for us. Consistency and warmth. If we think about this, that this child success is relying on adult behavior, how are your adults doing in your building? And what are you doing as administrators and as peers to take care of your adults? So I don't actually know where the staff room is, but just thinking about like, what does your staff room look like and what happens in your staff room? Is there restoration? Are your planning periods protected? Is there space to process difficult events that you have with a peer or with a kid? Do you have room for that, for navigating conflict? I think a lot also about like food in staff rooms too, and whether or not it actually makes you feel any better when you go back to your desk. Just a couple suggestions around this as adults and as kids, and the things that we're trying to reinforce is really dosing media and being critical about the types of media that we're consuming, monitoring our substance use, sleep, and social engagement, but in that 3,000-foot non-judgmental way. Like, what's happening with me? This is curious. I wonder what's going on. Engaging what you can control constructively and looking for ways to balance your thinking, seeking the gray. For depression, we're really trying to increase positive experiences and set some goals. So this seems, hard during COVID. And my recommendation to clients and to people that I love is, all right, so I know you can't exercise, but you've been dying to do push-ups. Like, can you teach yourself how to do 10 push-ups? Like, is that a goal that you're interested in? Yep, for sure. I actually have been meaning to needlepoint for a long time. Perfect, that's a good goal. I've been meaning to learn how to play this piece on the piano. Okay, well that's something. Part of the challenge of COVID is that we haven't felt productive. So figuring out how to set some small goals that make us feel accomplished, competent, and connected to other people, and increasing our self-care. So I think if I took a poll on how many people in this PD were wearing elastic waistbands, it would probably be real high. and mine would be up there too, right? So that I think we're used to, at this point, in enjoying some of the pieces of, the few pieces of COVID that have been beneficial, but also making sure that we're taking care of ourselves in basic ways that make us feel connected to the larger community and society. Okay, so trustworthiness and transparency. Here's my experience with March to June 2020, and I think it probably is similar to yours. Number, we can't close schools for equity and safety reasons. Okay, we're closing the schools for safety reasons. We're not going to teach for equity and access reasons. We're going to teach review content only. We're going to teach new content only. We're going to grade. Wait, we're not going to grade. We're kind of going to grade. Please log on. And so I think this has been most people's experience with like the closure. And to be really clear, I think people were doing the very best they could. This is brand new for all of us. This is not something that we predicted and knew exactly how to respond to. But as a parent, this was really challenging to kind of pivot back and forth. And as an educator, I'm sure that it was too. One of the things that was missing for me from the very beginning is, what is the goal? Like, what's the goal? Like, now that we're closed schools, is our goal to maintain progress? Is it to not lose content? Is it to stay connected with kids? Are there 3 skill sets that you want them to have by the time they graduate 3rd grade? But I think some of those pieces were missing in the rollout in what I experienced as a parent. So what is the goal of virtual learning at this point? If we're successful, what's happened? And I think if we are able to frame it that way, it does help us to figure out what the protocol is kind of going forward. I think this got much better towards the end, and I've worked with a number of school districts, and I think this is true. I think initially people got a whole lot of communication from a whole lot of people. Like, it was just a dump of communication, and parents did too. And to think about what your why is. So this is what are the goals? What are you doing? So we're going to do hybrid learning and virtual learning. We're doing it for this reason. This is why it's going to go this way. This is why we're having Wednesday be our cleaning day. Like, just to explain it, what it's going to look like, how it's going to go, when it's going to be implemented, and who's going to do it. I think people have gotten to this place of limiting the number of platforms used, but initially it was overwhelming. It was Flipgrid, it was Microsoft Teams, it was Zoom, it was, no, don't use Zoom. I mean, it was just like so many different technology platforms that I think was overwhelming to everybody. Limiting it to essentials, and then communicating across disciplines. When I think about a student who has special education services, that they have a case manager, they might have OT, they might be in the middle of a reeval from a psychologist, they might, have their teacher involved and a paraprofessional involved, and it can just be so much contact without coordination. And I'm going to show you a model for how you might be able to talk to families in a coordinated way in the whole building. Okay, so peer and staff support. I think when we think about educators, there have been a tremendous amount of new demands. So the biggest one is working while parenting, caretaking, partnering, and healing. That there has been just a tremendous amount of increased demand on educators as this has happened. And heartbreak too, right? So I really truly believe, I mean, my daughter's kindergarten teacher cries every time they're on Zoom just about, because she misses them and she loves her job. Like, she really enjoys the work that she does. It's been really hard for her to be out and away from the classroom. Adapting and adjusting to changing directives. So that whole list of, what I just read off, that happened to you guys too. Engaging with students virtually. So one of the things, my partner is actually a professor, he teaches, and he's been so frustrated, had the worst quarter he's had since he started teaching, like just does not enjoy it as much as he used to, and has found that he felt that it just didn't have an interpersonal connection. And what we eventually were able to process is that when you're in person with a kid, you can have high expectations, because he's not an easy teacher, I'll tell you that like straight up. But you can also almost like hold them and say, like, I know you can do this, and look them in their eyes and give them the confidence and capacity to really try and stretch and grow into this stuff. But without that part, without being able to really look at a kid and say, no, I know you got this, like, stay with it, like, I know you can do this, that very often it just feels like unrealistic demand and unfair demand. Rapidly learning new technology, virtual platforms has been challenging for tons of teachers, reevaluating the purpose and effectiveness of what's going on. And then this social work and mental health support. I definitely have never talked to a teacher throughout this whole period who isn't just worried about what's happening with kids at home. That knows that kids are supposed to be around other kids, they're supposed to be learning, they're supposed to be growing, and that is something that they're genuinely worried about. When I think about how desperately needed you guys are in the fall and throughout the course of next year, I think about multi-tiered systems of support with staff. So if you're an administrator here and a teacher, think about so this is actually from Carnegie Mellon. I meant to put the citation up and I forgot. Effective teaching involves acquiring relevant knowledge about our students. So that's our iReady, whatever test, that's our intake interviews, is figuring out what they know already, and then using that knowledge to inform our course design and classroom teaching. I'm going to change that and say effective educating involves acquiring relevant knowledge about our teachers and using that knowledge to inform our course design and classroom teaching. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a couple teachers. Teacher number 1, single parent, 2 kids at home, elderly parents, right? Teacher number 2, married, no kids, 30 years of teaching PE with masters in team building. Teacher number 3, bilingual, department chair, well-liked by colleagues, training in equity, ethnic studies. Teacher number 4, exceptional with tech, STEM, videos, high student engagement. My question is, how do you maximize the skill set and the knowledge base and the capacity of the teachers that you have? That very often teachers are more than willing to step up and step in when they can to help each other out, but we can sometimes get locked almost in a rigid idea of everybody does their own thing, and everybody, we're gonna keep it equal and keep it fair, and there's nothing about COVID that's fair. Consider your cross-building collaboration. You now have at least 3 months of virtual learning curricula for all grade levels already in your building teams. Do you have a repository for your public school system of all of these lessons that have already been created by your teams? What did you learn? What can you share? What worked? What didn't work? So the progression for my daughter's kindergarten class, when we first got content, initially it was review, which was not helpful for her, but we got review content because that was what was recommended and that was given out. And then we got subject matter stuff. So we got reading, writing, and math, reading, writing, and math, reading, writing, and math. But I have another kid who is also doing reading, writing, and math. So we would switch back and forth. And I thought my head was going to explode. By the end, the last week, there was one subject, right? Like ice cream. And there was math, reading, writing embedded in this PowerPoint that played itself, had videos. It was a beautiful thing. So I can tell that she, as a teacher, because she has her own kids at home, was learning what was working for her, what was challenging for her. And this is knowledge that I was like, oh man, I hope all the parents in this district have access to these lessons because they're wonderful. So thinking about how you can share content across your building and from building to building too. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about collaboration and mutuality with families. Tons of educational research going all the way back to the 1960s show us that parent school experiences, parental wealth and resources, and neighborhood and community are consistently the biggest predictors of academic achievement. Consistently. This is not data that feels good to us. This feels outside of our locus of control, right? Like this feels in these places that we have no control over. I really am challenging our educational systems to rethink that, because not engaging with families in a meaningful way and affecting their experiences with schools and their understanding of how schools operate is not serving our kids. And I think that was made abundantly clear during COVID. Kids don't come with a manual. I say this all the time to any parents that come in, that they are offered birthing classes, WIC, maybe parent-teacher conferences, but what parents need, average parents need, they need adequate resources, they need money, they need food, they need quality, affordable healthcare. I am so afraid that the budget crisis is gonna cut funding to Head Start, I can't tell you. Okay, so that we know that early childhood, early education is critical, it's pivotal, and we don't necessarily support it, right? 40% of working adults between the ages of, I think it was 25 and 60 have kids at home. So when we think about going back to work and reopening the economy, how in the world are we going to do that if we don't have childcare? So thinking about schools and childcare being out as essential. parents don't usually get instruction on parenting. So you get birthing classes, you get breastfeeding classes, but you don't get much on what to do when your kid is having tantrums virtually every day, or they won't sleep. We don't get instruction on navigating systems. So I used to be a school psychologist. I still am licensed as one, but I used to be in schools, and man, navigating the special education, the IEP process, it was so hard. And it's hard for my like highly educated clients, like the doctors and nurses. They're like, what is this? I don't even understand what this document means. So thinking about how to navigate systems is not something that parents get a lot of help with. Understanding behavior, same thing. That unless you're regularly seeing, family medicine doc who has some background in this and some passion for this, there isn't a ton of support for things like sleep or feeding challenges or sibling fighting, those types of things. There's virtually no instruction for parents on how to use incentives. Okay, so I teach all of my parents that come in how to use a behavior plan. And again, this is like, sometimes these are my super highly educated parents where I'm like, you need to get these 3 earrings. She will work for these 3 earrings. I swear to you, this is what it's going to look like. We're going to, she's going to check in with me and she's going to develop a habit. This is about developing habits. And I go, oh, okay. But to be able to teach how to use incentives effectively, right? So no, if she doesn't do the dishes, you can't take the earrings back. That's not how a behavior plan works. So really helping to understand those things is something that I needed formal instruction in, and thank goodness I have it. But I think all the time about how everybody should. And parents don't have any instruction on facilitating learning. So I can't tell you the number of people that I've met, both socially and professionally, who've said, I can't teach my own kid. Like I can't do the virtual learning thing. I've lost my temper 6 times and I've never lost my temper with my kid before. I can't do it, I'm stepping out of it. That they actually don't know how to teach. And as somebody who, I'm a psychologist by training, I was never taught how to teach, and maybe that's evident to you guys, but you're being kind. I've had to learn things. So I've had to learn things about active learning strategies, about engagement, about proximity, about all of these pieces that I'm not really implementing very well via Zoom, but I do actually know about now. And they weren't things that I knew before I tried to do it myself and recognized that I needed a lot of help with it. And parents don't have tons of community support. So we are a very mobile society, whereas we used to be, we used to actually have a village. And a village really makes a difference to being able to handle crisis and navigate child rearing. It's really, really hard. So this has been a bit of an epiphany for me, is that I genuinely think that the model of schooling has not shifted enough. That when we think back to like the origins of the community school, there was an understanding that what was happening at home, the school teacher knew what was happening at home. They were in the same community, they went to the same church, they had their boys played together, and that there was a commonality, there was a sameness to the teachers, the teaching staff, like what was happening in the building was happening outside of the building. And that's just not true anymore. Which makes me wonder, and I want to be really clear, it's not as though schools or buildings have provided educators the opportunity or the time or the structure or the support to develop a lot of these relationships. I'm arguing that it's time, that it's definitely time to learn and to get uncomfortable and to really reach out and meet and know family better. Stay at home, so there's new data now showing that it's totally true that the wealthy parents have been more capable of engaging kids in virtual learning. So that's definitely happening, and the drop off is massive to kids in poverty, right? But what we also know is that parents in poverty, based in Census Bureau data, spent as much time homeschooling their kids as parents making over $200,000 a year. So they spent the same amount of time. They don't necessarily have the same resources or support, right? So this is just a quick slide on all of the ways in which educators are experts in learning. Okay, so this is just a UW, Masters in Education. Like these are the areas of content that you guys are specialists in. And we sometimes fall into that expert trap where we just assume everybody knows what we know because we've been doing it for so long. Probably like the first half of this presentation where I'm slamming through it because it's something that I know so well and is so apparent to me. But this is not the case for your parents. My recommendation in the fall is to find some way to advocate for more time with families. And if you can't find them, going to where they are, but to connect with parents, figure out what they need, what's going on with them. This is a very difficult thing to do because it engages that part of us that's going to hurt if our parents are struggling, right? So if they don't have resources, if they're really struggling, and it's going to be very difficult to know that and not be able to help with that or change that. What I would say is you still actually need that information if you are going to ask them to do anything else. Because if you don't have it and you're providing things that feel like demands, it's not probably fair without addressing some of those other pieces. The other thing is checking in regularly, being persistent and assuming positive intent. So if you're checking in with them just to check in with them, not like, oh, he didn't do his assignment again, but like, hey, what's going on? I've missed him. I'm wondering how you guys are doing. That means something, and it actually is important to families. And everything's changing so fast. Leading with connection first and then content. Providing guidance on how to establish structure after you know what the living situation actually is. So if you find out that one of your parents is in a shelter and has no privacy, your recommendations on structure are going to look different than they would in my house. Troubleshooting behavior and incentive plans. So you guys might know actually that, you know, somebody's kid does way better in the morning than they do after lunch. So you may say like, my experience with Johnny is that he does so well, like from 8 to 10. So let's do math first, because I know that's hard for him. We'll hit him with math and the incentive, and then we'll let him go. But to be able to problem solve with families around some of those things. And then to the extent that you have any capacity to do this, to really teach how to teach. So the content coming home, most parents don't actually know how to facilitate learning. So when I'm talking to my parents about the parents of the kids that I work with around even like George Floyd, racial justice, things like that, like ask questions, see what they know, ask them how they know it, give them some reading material, figure out if they can make this fit within their worldview, have them write something about it, but to teach how to teach, because families don't have it. Obviously, access to technology and internet is essential, and I know the districts are working really hard on this. The other piece is, what is your incentive? Like thinking about it for yourself, what is the incentive for your students to come online? Because I'm gonna argue that the #1 incentive for them is social. Okay, so they want to see their friends. They want to chat about Minecraft. They want to figure out if she's dating him anymore or whatever it is. Like they actually want this social piece. So if you know that, figuring out how to structure some social engagement to start and end most of your lessons may be really beneficial when you think about virtual learning. How do you engage them socially so that they're more motivated to do the work? And then the next piece is like, what are the family's goals during this time period? Because they may be totally different from the districts and from yours. So like maybe their goal is that they focus on writing because he's behind in that, but he's ahead in math and he's ahead in reading. And so I'm not going to care about that. We're just doing math. Well, that might save you some time and some understanding of what's going on. It might facilitate a conversation. So there's this model that came out of Monroe. I don't know if you guys know Joe Nigel, but he does a lot of training on ACEs and trauma, and he's really good. And he has been deeply connected to the Monroe and Sultan community up north. So he's been on the city council, he's connected to their community services board, and he's now working for Monroe Public Schools. And when COVID hit, he was able to implement multi-tiered systems of essentially assessment and access for families. So all faculty in Monroe Public Schools were assigned families that they had to call and ask questions about basic needs. From there, they were sorted into tiered levels of needs and support that was reassessed weekly. So they called every single week. And there was an ongoing model of support and evaluation that really leveraged the relationships that they already had with the Monroe Community Coalition. So what this actually looked like was that in Tier 1, teaching staff, and I mean all teaching staff available, made weekly family calls. So we're talking teachers, paras, anybody that was engaged and on the payroll were calling families, asking about these basic Maslow needs. Do you have food? Do you have shelter? Do you have utilities? Do you have Wi-Fi? Are you safe? Do you have health care? And based on those questions, they either said, okay, great, I'm gonna check in with you again next week, see how it's going, or they got bumped up to tier 2, right? So that no, I don't have any Wi-Fi, I only have one device for 4 kids. So that might go to tier 2, principals and counselors, try to triage, figure some of those things out, find additional resources. If it's more acute than that, it would go to psychologists, your SPED teachers, other mental health staff that would really work to provide that wrap support. And they did this collectively across all buildings, from what I understand. I've been trying to catch him to follow up and see how it's been going, but I haven't been able to yet. All of these calls were documented in a shared Google Sheet for the school. Okay, so every call that went out was documented, it was shared. Each school sheet was shared with the district lead to determine whether or not a building had really acute or specific needs, or they had more resources that they could share out, and that these resource list was updated constantly, and resources were shared across buildings. When I think about the model, I think my couple of questions are like, what are the prerequisite relationships for that model to work? And I think that who Joe Nigel is a big part of that. He had a lot of trust in his counseling staff. He was able to leverage relationships he already had with community coalitions. And I think he must have been able to support staff in asking some of those questions because they're not comfortable. And when we think about the reasons why we don't ask questions like that of our families, I think there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of different reasons. We may be afraid of what we learn, that there's discomfort with adults and parents. Most of us didn't get into childhood education because we like adults. That's usually like the bummer that we realize later is like, oh man, I got to work with a lot of adults. Fear of causing offense or shame, feeling helpless to fix the problem, feeling like you're already overwhelmed. Unfamiliarity with their culture or a lack of established relationships with the family or heavy reliance on what it's always been like. I think right now, in the midst of COVID, I do this all the time with teachers and with parents and with kids, is this question of like, where do you put the problem? Okay, so if we imagine that it's, you can't get this kid online, the kid is not engaging in virtual learning, very often we end up here with parents. Well, what have you done? What have you tried? What's going on? Versus sort of asking them to come over here and look at it with you, being like, huh, he doesn't seem to be engaged. What do you think's going on? What could we do? What would work? And to really move your perspective so that you're continually trying to stand with. I do this with teenagers constantly. My mom hates, curious. I wonder why she hates that, right? So we're going to step over here and we're going to look at it together. We're going to see, okay, so you can't take the car out because you got an a fender bender last week. So what are we going to do about it? What do you think she wants? You know, so you're moving to the side to look at it together. And I think in the case of COVID, given everything we're facing and everything that's going on in our world right now, our effort to step to the side and step and stand near people and look at the problem together is really going to be key going forward. Okay? It's very easy when we feel afraid, and there's a lot of fear right now, to get defensive, get protective, to not be present. But I really truly feel like if we are going to help our kids catch up to, academically, if we're going to help them re-engage emotionally, there's a lot of fear that they're processing too. It's going to be really important to stand with the other adults that are caretaking our kids as much as we can. And finally, empowerment, voice, and choice. So I'm wondering about the use of parent-student focus groups. Do you know what's happening in the lives of your kids? Are you clear on what parents' goals are for what's happening next? Like what do they seem to care the most about? You're not going to get consensus. You never ever will. If you put 100 adults in the room, you're not going to get consensus on anything really. But you may learn some things about what the fears are, what their worries are. And what might be possible going forward. This has been really interesting in resource mapping. So going to places and saying like, well, we got a big issue with domestic violence. Someone's like, oh, you know what? Actually, there are 3 shelters here and here and here, and there's a person that comes and trains our building. So thinking about how we can, as a community, kind of come together, pool resources, and build strengths together. Because this is different for all of us. And finally, I just want to say that I know that I've been pushing, so this is a lot of pushing on ideas and constructs and framing, and it might have felt like a lot of demands. None of them are demands. They're just encouragement to think a little bit outside the box as we go back to school, because it's very normal when we're stressed and nervous to want to go back to what we know, and what we know doesn't exist in the same way in the foreseeable future. So I deeply appreciate educators. I love working with school systems. I feel like the amount of good and potential that buildings have to change kids' trajectory and support families and kids is just massive. So I appreciate you. I know that Erin does as well, and I'm glad you guys were here with me. If you have any questions, is there anything that came up, Erin, during the chat, or you can also email me. I hear birds.
That's content. We were asked, somebody was asking about a break.
Yeah.
But we've been moving right through. We could take a little break before we can go to breakout sessions and then give everybody a little time to take a quick break, probably this way, yeah. Since we're getting down to about 40 minutes left.
Okay, let's do a break and come back. Do you want to screen share, Erin, or do you want me to? It's okay if you don't have them.
So I'm in the chat, but I'm interested in seeing if there is a universal screener. I'm specifically thinking of secondary, but I bet other people would be curious too. If you think of a resource that would be smart in the fall.
I mean, so a universal screener, what are you looking for?
Trauma impacts from the quarantine.
I think honestly, I would assume that's the case in some ways versus looking, I mean, I don't think anything's been validated for COVID stress related to kids right now. You could certainly go, you could do a lit review and see the types of questions they ask them, but it wouldn't be like a validated survey at this point. I think what you're looking for are behavioral indicators that kids aren't doing well or they're struggling in some way. And there are a lot of universal screeners for that. The one that Tacoma is working towards is SABRS, but essentially just seeing behaviorally, that's what we get from kids, is we get that they're struggling in some way. And I think that the assumption is that the adjustment will be hard for folks. In terms of the individual assessment of impact, I think it's really individual based on family, right? So that goes back to that Monroe model. How do you actually figure out what's happening in given family's life? You could have two musicians in the family and their income is like plummeted and they're really scared, right? So that's very different from two people who have full-time jobs but are trying desperately to homeschool 4 kids. So it's just this, it can be really, really different depending on the family versus a family that's struggling with domestic violence and alcoholism or whatever it is. So I think that part of it is going to be an individual, it's going to have to be individualized, that assessment would be.
For our region, we'll be doing a follow-up session, and so that our school districts can get back together with their teams. We originally were going to break our districts into teams and then pop in, but it became so many people registered that we couldn't do that in an effective manner. So we're going to set up a day that we will be able to do some consultations. So your teams will be able to go back to do some planning, and then they will come back and be able to participate with us, and we can kind of do a think tank around what things to consider as we're looking at your individual plans, because again, with the different districts and the different counties and being in different phases, it's really hard to give just one set of guidance, and things may change between now and then, as we know, and so we want to be able to just be responsive to you as well. So don't hesitate to reach out and ask for additional time or supports in this area.
Is there a way that we can get some support for other areas? I'm specifically with ESD 123, and all of what you said would be fantastic for a lot of my colleagues to hear. Or will there be another presentation that they can get in on?
I would encourage you to reach out to your ESD, your contacts at your ESD, and see what kinds of supports that they are doing. We opened this up to anyone that was interested in doing that. And so this is kind of the kickoff, but we wouldn't necessarily be providing that direct support to the school teams, outside of our region. But I am assuming if you reach out to your ESD, they could potentially assist with that as well.
And for those who didn't read the chat, it looks as though DOH and LNI are considering face shields, but as of right now, it's masks. So I definitely don't want to give the wrong information. That right now it's face masks.
And I would just, you know, a lot of times we've been talking to the superintendents, but I think that, you know, really looking backwards, because, you know, we instantly changed our method of teaching without a lot of thought because we didn't have time. And so looking at what things we put in place during that transition, and were they really things that we needed families to do, or were they things that were helpful for families? And so really looking at that and how do we make those more trauma sensitive and more focused on support in the beginning will be helpful, especially, you know, as we know, we've heard that we need to be able to potentially move into a digital learning again quickly in the future. And so really having the time now to be able to be thoughtful about, you know, what learning looks like in person, what learning looks like digitally, and just really being thoughtful about that. And then, you know, we want you to also think about your staff, not just our kids. And we touched on that a little bit. You know, we have to really manage some of the situations that are occurring for our staff as well. And so being able to be thoughtful about how that aligns with our tiered supports. Some staff members may need a little more support than others. And then of course we did put out the link for Dr. Laura Vanderlipsky's book, which is amazing. And then we will also send out the link for her video clip that Lauren shared earlier.
It's part of a 20-minute TED Talk and it's great. She also has a follow-up book called The Age of Overwhelm that is excellent as well.
And if you have a chance to read The Age of Overwhelm, it is a really great book. We had our behavioral health team read it during the quarantine, and it really just provided a space for them away from the digital learning and the telehealth to really just kind of be grounded. And so very helpful if you want to use that as a resource for your staff. And don't forget, you know, your lunch staff, your busing staff, be thoughtful about, you know, your whole system and how this is going to impact all of those maneuvering parts. So. Any other thoughts or questions? I feel like we're a little ahead of schedule. Lauren, did you have anything else today?
Not really. I wanted to just be really clear that, you know, we're all working to kind of reimagine what education can look like going forward. So I think there are for sure going to be bumps, but I think the goal is definitely to enlist as many people in the holding and educating and caretaking of our kids as we can going forward. And that our goal is to really make sure that we have we're taking care of ourselves first so that we're capable of doing that, and of bringing that presence that Vanderlipsky talks about, of being really with people as we go through this together. I don't have a lot more content. I thought we were doing some breakout pieces, so there isn't more to do. It's been a lot that I dumped on you too. Trauma Stewardship is a free download. The Age of Overwhelm is your follow-up, and I didn't see that that one was a download.
If we don't have any other questions, we will be putting this information up on the Reopening Schools with Care website on ESD 113, as well as some other resources. And don't hesitate to reach out to myself, to Lynn Nelson, to Lauren, hopefully that's okay, Lauren, to our team to just really, if you need some additional supports. And then I would also encourage you to reach out to your ESDs if you're not within ESD 113 region. With that, I really appreciate it, you guys. I appreciate all the work you're doing to support all of our kids.
You take care of our babies. Thank you.
Yes, yes. and yourself.
Yep.